Get started. I'd like to call this meeting of the Coralville City Council to order on December 13th, 2022. Could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Knudsen. Here. Gross. Quinn.
Here.
Jones. Here. Goodrich.
Here.
All council members except Councilmember Gross are present, as is the mayor, the city clerk, the city attorney, the city administrator, and several other staff in the audience. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Jones, seconded by Nguyen. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the agenda is approved. On to item number 4, community comments. This is the time for community members to speak to us about items that aren't on the agenda or items that are on the agenda but are not subject to a public hearing. Each speaker will have 5 minutes, and we do reserve the right to adjust both the individual speaking time and the overall comment time based on the number of speakers or any accommodations that a speaker might have. So is there anyone that would like to speak to us this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to item number 5. This is a public hearing for a conservation easement agreement. This easement is for Reach 1, Reach 3, and Becky's Creek. And this would total an area of a little over 42.5 acres for a one-time stewardship fee of $18,000. This is a requirement of the banking instrument for the Clear Creek Stream Bank mitigation. I will now open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone that would like to speak to us? Are there any written comments? No written. Okay. Oh, you would, okay.
You gave a great overview, Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is part of our Clear Creek Stream Mitigation Bank process. It is required of the mitigation bank before we can sign off on the final papers to have an outside entity in place that would hold these acreages in a conservation easement. And what that means is they would help us to assess whether or not we are meeting the terms of the stream bank mitigation, and if we would not be meeting the terms, they would then inform the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and work with us to get this within compliance. So very rarely would a conservation easement have to do anything like that, and we certainly don't intend for them ever to have to take those kinds of actions, but it is required of us to have it in place. We've talked to several different entities about this and selected Midwest Mitigation Oversight Association, which is headquartered in Kansas City, Missouri, and they are currently working with over 120 municipal, county, state, or NGOs in holding conservation easements, and it's a company that has been specifically set up to do this professionally. So we feel very good about this. The map I have up on the screen is Reach 1, Reach 3, and Becky's Creek, so you can see those areas outlined in purple for where we're talking about. Each one, when these come to, they will officially come to you to be signed at a later meeting, but each one will come as a separate conservation easement.
Great. Thank you very much for that overview. Does anyone have any questions, or are there any comments?
So it's a one-time fee, so they're responsible for this for how long?
Life.
For life.
Mm-hmm.
That could go on a while.
It could go on, it's going to go on a long time. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
So we have 7 reach, right?
We have
Sherry?
6 reaches.
6 reach,
Yep.
and all 6 reach, when we get there, this will
We'll
be the
have this
person who
kind of
manage.
a document executed.
Great. All right. I will now close the public hearing, and we will move on to item number 6, 10th Avenue Urban Renewal Plan. This is a public hearing for the abatement portion of the development agreement for the 413 10th Avenue project. I will now open the public hearing on this item. Are there any written comments? Okay. I will now close the public hearing, and we will consider the resolution.
Resolution approving the 10th Avenue Urban Revitalization Plan is introduced for adoption by Councilmember Knutson, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Goodrich. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Okay. Could I get the roll call, please?
Councilmember Quinn,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Goodrich,
Aye.
Knutson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved, all ayes with Gross absent. Item number 7, urban renewal areas. We have 2 parts to this agenda item. The first is an ordinance that would set the base value of 3 properties in the Oakdale urban renewal area on Cross Park Road. And these 3 properties are the car wash, the auto parts store, and a multi-tenant building. This would be the 3rd consideration of this ordinance. Could I have the ordinance read, please?
Ordinance number 2022-1014 and ordinance amending ordinance number 608-707, 2001-942, 2006-1052, 2013-1009, 2014-1007, 2017-1017, and 2020-1014, providing that general property taxes levied and collected each year on all property located within the Coralville Urban Renewal Project area in the city of Coralville, County of Johnson, State of Iowa, by and for the benefit of the State of Iowa, City of Coralville, County of Johnson, Iowa City Community School District, and other taxing districts be paid to a special fund for payment of principal and interest on loans, monies advanced to, and indebtedness, including bonds issued or to be issued, incurred by said city in connection with said urban renewal redevelopment project, introduced for adoption and 3rd and final consideration by Councilmember Wynn, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Jones. Any questions or comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Goodrich,
Aye.
Knutson,
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Ordinance passes its 3rd consideration, all ayes with Gross absent. Second part of this agenda item, we have another ordinance that would set the base value of the 413 10th Avenue project property, and this would be in the 12th Avenue urban renewal area. It's the 3rd consideration of this ordinance as well. Could I have the ordinance read, please?
Ordinance number 2022-1015 and ordinance amending ordinance numbers 651, 706, 96-749, 96-777, 2003-969, 2013-1008, 2014-1011, 2015-1017, 2016-1019, and 2017-1015, providing that general property taxes levied and collected each year on all property located within the 12th Avenue Urban Renewal Project area in the city of Coralville, County of Johnson, State of Iowa, by and for the benefit of the State of Iowa, City of Coralville, County of Johnson, Iowa City Community School District, and other taxing districts, be paid to a special fund for payment of principal and interest on loans, monies advanced to, and indebtedness, including bonds issued to or to be issued incurred by said city in connection with said urban renewal development project. It's introduced for 3rd and final consideration by Councilmember Jones, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Goodrich. Any questions or comments? Could I get the roll call, please?
Councilmember Goodrich,
Aye.
Knutson,
Aye.
Quinn,
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Ordinance passes its 3rd consideration, all ayes with Gross absent. Item number 8, parking fees. This ordinance would raise the parking fines to $25, and if not paid in 30 days, the fine will increase by $5. The current fee of $10 has been in place since 1999. All right, could I have the ordinance, please?
Ordinance amending parking fees is introduced for adoption and first consideration by Councilmember Goodrich, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Nguyen. I will open up the discussion portion here just by asking Kevin to give us a little bit of an overview
Yeah.
on this.
So, couple things here. There've been an increase in parking violations, and it seems like in discussion with the police chief that the $10 fee doesn't seem to be very effective in discouraging that behavior. So, a lot of cities have raised them up to $25. So that's why we've gone to the $25. The $5 increase is actually a state code provision that you can only increase the fine by $5 if they don't pay within 30 days. So that's why it's sort of a weird thing, but that's what the state code provides for in parking fees. It doesn't say what the parking fee has to be. It says that they can only increase by $5 by not paying within 30 days. So if somebody doesn't pay their fines within 30 days, usually after about three different fines that they haven't paid, we'll send notice, and then in theory they can be towed for not paying those fines. So that's sort of why we got to this point here, is that we're trying to make it more of a deterrent to actually follow the parking laws instead of so three would, instead of being $30, it'd be $75, and I think it's just probably time to put it up a little bit farther.
Seems a little high, especially. When we compare it, I think I read that Iowa cities, if it's in a commercial zone, it's 25, and if it's in any other prohibited area, it's 15.
It's up to you. That was
Yeah.
just the recommendation that we go to 25 there, just so. I have other cities that we have where
Okay.
we've been raised to 25.
Okay.
And obviously Iowa City has a different mechanism
Sure.
for collecting parking it's not a revenue-making thing by any imagination. We're trying to hopefully discourage behavior that's been more, popping up more.
One of the things that's happened is this is a result of, is we've had neighbors fighting over, having cars parked in front of their house, complaining about it. The police department would ticket them, and it would just continue, and so then it just continues those disputes between neighbors that didn't, they wanted the law enforced. Well, the police department were doing what they could do, but it wasn't obviously enough to cause the person to change, to the people to change their mind. And we've also had that in the Ira Renford Landing as well, that we've had people that just continue and gather more and more tickets because it doesn't bother them about what the price is. And one of the things to remember, or we remind people too, that if somebody has a legitimate complaint about why that they didn't feel like they should receive a ticket, they can contact the police department, and the police chief or one of the lieutenants is very good about dealing with those. Or, for example, when a special event is happening or something like that might cause them to have gotten a ticket, but maybe, so they do make those exclusions.
And how are we, I'm assuming we'll be communicating that if the change is approved, it'll be
Yeah,
widely-
we would put a lot of information out both on social media and the Coralville Connection as well.
Do we know in what area of the city that the more people violate this?
I'm not sure do you know if it's it's just more in general?
Yeah, all over.
Also all over the city?
Yeah, there are people that just choose to park on the street, pay the $10 every night,
Okay.
and that is causing us a lot of problems. There are more violators on the east side of the city, just in sheer numbers, but where are the violations? All over.
Chief, I am direction challenged, so can you please point out where east is?
IRL,
I am.
going towards the IRL is east.
Yeah, yeah.
My only concern is thank you, Chief. I guess my only concern about raising the rate is that it will disproportionately affect the marginalized population who live in apartment complex in places where they don't have a designated parking space, so they have to use the street. And I guess if the fine increased, that could put a dent into there.
We should
But-
not have any
Yeah.
apartment complex that does not have, I mean, that's part of your rental permit, that you have to have enough parking for for your units. And so that shouldn't be an issue, and if there is, they should contact our rental housing department, because that's one of the things that they always check, is whether there's enough parking.
In fact, our ordinance requires 25% more spaces for guest parking now. So it actually requires, it's even more than that now.
Right.
So are most of these in the middle of the night? We don't let
Yeah.
parking,
There's no street parking 2 to 6 period
2 to 6.
for anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, so most of them are overnight, and both in the Iowa River Landing and in the neighborhoods. The ones I'm familiar with that I've had the most complaints is in the older part of Coralville, that Fifth Street to the railroad track area.
And we have had our share in my household, when my teenage son does not put the car back in the driveway. I mean, there's some of that.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are probably ours, a lot of the tickets, so. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay. Could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Ordinance passes its first consideration, all ayes with Gross absent. Item number 9, penalties for repeat offenders of nuisance abatement. This ordinance would set penalties for repeat offenders and would allow the city to immediately abate nuisance properties if the same violation occurs again within 24 months. Could I have the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 2022-1017, an ordinance amending Chapter 50 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Coralville regarding repeat offenders for nuisance abatement, introduced for adoption, first consideration by Councilmember Knutson, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Quinn. Kevin, can you give a little overview on this one as well?
Yes, we have numerous properties in town, and what happens is we give them an abatement notice. They either abate the nuisance, or we abate the nuisance for them, and we send that
can
bill.
you give us a couple of examples?
Example.
I don't really. So there's a house, there's a house over here next to City Hall that it just continuously has. We've towed cars full of junk. We've done 3 abatements over $2,000 or $3,000 a piece. Some people have hoarding issues or just issues like that, and it just continually goes on and on. You give them a notice. 30 days, and if you have to file a municipal infraction, that's in Johnson County, the courts are backed up. You're talking 2-3 months, and the neighbors shouldn't, at this point, the neighbors are, shouldn't have to put up with this. And the other thing, people with snow or lawn, we give notices, we give door hangings, we give people plenty of notice the first time. You got to make sure your lawn's mowed. You got to make sure the snow is off your sidewalk or the ice is off your sidewalk. It's not like we just go in there and do it right away. It's the same people. I mean, I could probably name 20 addresses off the top of my head in the 20 years I've been here that we go to repeatedly over and over again. So this basically will give us the opportunity to assess higher penalties and go in there and get them abated more quickly.
So you would still go through the procedure the first time, which there's a lengthy notice procedure and all of that. So you would still go through that whole procedure, and then at subsequent times is when you wouldn't have to do that. And I mean, in the example that Kevin gave,
Is it for the same?
the
Same violation, yeah. We're
exact
not
same
talking-
violation at the same location and the same person. This is not for.
So it could be, if it's snow removal one time
not.
and then
No.
garbage
No.
another time.
No.
Those are separate.
Those are all separate. It's the same issue. And in the example that he used at the house, I mean, the neighbors have become very frustrated because we deal with it, and then 30 days later, it's started over again. And so that's the ones that it's addressing, not people. And most people do take care of them when they're contacted, because we don't even go through the formal notice procedure until they've already been contacted, either by a hang tag or personally.
And there's a whole list of other, it
Oh,
isn't
yeah.
just the lawn stuff, it isn't just the junk or anything like that. There's a lengthy list of things that would count, and it's mostly has to do with public health and safety and environmental protections as well. I do worry a little bit. I want to, there is a fine line. I think, some of those behaviors might be the result of either some type of trauma or a mental health issue. And I worry a little bit about over penalizing or how do we strike that balance between obviously maintaining the property in a healthy way, but also acknowledging that sometimes these are the result of more just somebody that's not, it's a mental health issue.
I've worked with the gentleman who owns the house I talked about. I called Elder Services at the county and asked if they would be willing to help him. They said yes, but they have to voluntarily want to be helped. And so when I talked to the gentleman, he did not want anybody's help. So part of the problem is, and we recognize that. We're not trying to, some people just don't keep their properties up. Some people, like this gentleman's house, there's something more going on. I've been in contact with his daughters, and his daughters and son-in-laws have actually come over and helped clean some of the stuff up. So we also try to, we realize that we're hoping this is a last resort, and we don't have to do this. So we're trying to exhaust all our avenues of helping before. But at some point, you got to say, okay, the neighbors who live next to this person deserve to have something done about it also. So we got to balance that fine line too. So.
And one of the other things that is in the ordinance is that some houses can be considered a nuisance if there is excessive fighting or things like that. The houses of ill fame, I think, is what it says in the ordinance.
We have that's an old term, but
Yeah.
we have that, like in rental housing, we have that for what I call the 3 strikes ordinance, and basically that only applies to the actual person at that unit who since we've had that ordinance, we've never had to get the 3 strikes on anybody. What we do is we send a notice to the landlord that says, here's your choices. You can do something about this. You can contact us. You can evict the person, or you can give us a plan how this isn't going to happen anymore. It can go from garbage. It can go from people fighting on your property, playing loud music. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many times the police officers have to waste their time going back to the same place over and over and over again. So we've had that ordinance in place for over 10 years, and we've never gotten to 3 strikes where we've taken a rental permit away. The landlords actually most of them appreciate having noticed that their tenants are doing something. They want to do something about it because it will affect whether they can rent their properties in the future also.
And I would assume that we would have procedures and things. I mean, I'm just thinking about it through the lens of the work that I do with domestic violence victims.
Domestic violence is not a strikeable offense. That is not.
Okay.
We're talking fighting. There is no strike letter issued for a domestic violence offense. That's not something that is listed as something that would get a strike.
Okay.
Because that has nothing to do with people's choice or whatever. We're not gonna send a notice out for that.
So this ordinance will essentially allow us to act more swiftly to resolve the issue, to
Yeah.
keep the neighbor who have to live next
Right.
to that happy.
Yeah, after the first time, because
Yeah,
it
we're
is,
still gonna go
it's
through.
still, you have to go through it the first time, and some people don't understand. There's a 30-day notice requirement, and there's some other things like that. So it does, the first time, take quite a while.
So why 24 months?
I've fashioned after a couple other cities' ordinances that use the 24 months. We could use 12. We could use that's where I got the.
Reasonable.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Most of them, it's a lot sooner than 12 months even.
Yeah. So
Whatever happened to the Fairchild property, did the city take that back, or?
The one on Fairview?
Or Fairview, yeah.
Yes,
Fairview.
we do have title of that property through the court, order, yes.
And what kind of penalties are we talking here?
If you do a municipal infraction, the highest, you can do $750 the first time, $1,000 the second time. Most of the time, it's ended up between $100 and $250. It's the judge's choice. But what we would ask for is, you can, in a municipal infraction, you can also get an order from the court that says you have to keep your house in compliance, which is more effective, because then if they don't, I can file an action in court saying they're in contempt of the judge's order, which is way more, a penalty, a monetary penalty. I mean, in theory, you can be thrown in jail for contempt of court. Not that that's what we're looking for, but that's why the municipal infractions is a good tool for cities that usually make sure that there's no repeat offenses either. But like I said, we're backed up in court, and it takes 2 to 3 months to get through the process.
And those fines, that level is set by the state, correct? Or
The
it's
maximum
like-
fines are set by the
Yes.
state, yes.
Yeah,
And then the
Is that on
judge
top of
decides amongst.
Our expenses?
okay.
What'd you say?
That's on top of our expenses if we had to clear it out?
So if we clear, yeah, we can get if we have to go in and do that, which the judge is allowed on municipal infraction, says if they don't do it in 30 days, you can go do it. You can put that back on their taxes also.
Okay.
So and the fine is in addition to that, yes. And that actually goes as a lien against their property until it's paid off. So if they ever refinance or anything, it does get paid back.
Our goal is never to have to get to that
No.
point. And I think the instances where we do is back to your question, that they probably have a mental issue or something else going on. It's because most people, by and large, take care of it once they've been notified.
Well, I appreciate, Kevin, the way it sounds like you are actually trying to work and help with work with the folks and help them. And I really appreciate that. And, just hope that we can, find that right balance between keeping the neighborhoods healthy but also not being overly punitive when it's somebody that has an issue, so.
Like I said, if we know it, and we've contacted family members and stuff before, so even up in Old Summit Hills, when there used to be a couple houses out there that were demolished, we got family members involved up there, so.
Awesome, thank you.
One more thing I had.
Yeah.
This would include lack of mowing, right?
Yes.
So I think there's I don't know if to call it a trend or
It is a trend, yeah.
to not mow in May.
No mow May,
No
no mow
mow
May.
May.
Yes, no mow
So
May.
how will this ordinance affect people who want to do
If
that?
you go above the ordinance, you will be mowed one way or the other. Either we'll give you a notice, you'll do it, or we'll hire somebody to do it, and it'll cost you a lot more if you get hired to do it.
But usually in May, you're not going to.
Yeah.
You're not going to get to.
Yeah.
Because it's just starting to grow.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you won't get in violation of the
I
ordinance.
think it's 10 inches,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 inches.
It's not.
So it usually takes a while before you'd ever get to that. So if you mowed in April, chances are you aren't going to violate the ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And trust me, you do not want your grass to be 10 inches before you mow.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Wynn,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Goodrich,
Aye.
Knutson.
Aye.
Ordinance passes its first consideration, all ayes with Gross absent. Item number 10, CRANDIC Railway Company land leases. This item would approve 2 land leases. Land lease document 1016 is for a public storm sewer located on the CRANDIC property north of Highway 6 between Clear Creek and CRANDIC Park in Iowa City. And land lease document 1072 covers Stormwater Pump Station 6 located within CRANDIC property near the northwest corner of 71 2nd Street, and that would be the Jiffy Lube. Could I have the resolution, please?
Resolution approving 2 land leases with the Cedar Rapids and Iowa City CRANDIC Railway Company, introduced for adoption by Councilmember Wynn, seconded by.
Second.
Seconded by Knutson. Any questions or comments?
These leases are in place. Obviously, we have our stormwater pump stations there already. They just wanted some changes to the leases, so that's why they're brought back through. And the changes are minor changes. It's nothing.
Are those pump stations totally on CRANDIC land?
I think
Yeah,
so.
mostly.
Yeah, 6 is for sure. They'd like to give land. Like to give these leases and everything out instead of
Yeah.
an easement for some reason.
Any other questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Goodrich.
Aye.
Knutson.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Resolution is approved, all ayes with Gross absent. Item number 11, Resource Enhancement and Protection Fund. This is for a $100,000 grant with $20,000, which is a 15% local match in cash and in-kind services. This will help with timber stand improvement in the Dovetail Recreation Area and Colony Open Space. And we have Parks and Rec Director Sherry Proud here to give us some information on this.
We'll do some better math first. 15,000, 15% match is 15,000. Sorry about the error there.
Oh, yeah.
We were awarded a $100,000 REAP grant, and for timber stand improvement, we'll go into these areas and work on invasive species, lower understory. So things like autumn olive, oriental bittersweet, honeysuckle, things like that that can really tear into a forest floor and not allow good hardwoods to grow and or native plants. So one of the areas that would be included in this grant is the Dovetail area on the west side, the northwest side of the lake there, and we're already starting to develop our mapping to be able to bid this project here in January. So in this particular one, will be broken down into 2 areas. And then the other one, how come it's not up? Okay, here's the other one. The Colony Open Space area would be the other site. And in this one, we're actually going to break it down into 4 areas to be able to work on all of the same same understory growth there in the Colony area.
Great.
Is that all part of the fen?
So our fens are, this map shows a pretty good, let's see if I can get this just a little bit bigger. So our fens in this particular area, you can see this one here. This is the north fen. And then there's a finger of it that goes out and up into this area. And then the south fen is this triangular shape here. The real dark green stuff that you see around here are actually also part of those invasive species and those were just removed with our the dewatering project. So a lot of this work, we had intended to do all of this acreage as much as we could get done starting at the north and moving to the south, and we already are 20 acres in, so we're really excited about that. That means that money will stretch a lot further down into the south area.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, could I have the resolution, please?
Resolution approving an agreement with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources for grant funding via the Resource Enhancement and Protection REAP program, introduced for adoption by Councilmember Jones, seconded by.
Seconded by Goodrich. Any questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, this resolution has the wrong dollar amount as well.
Oh, yeah. Yes. We'll get that corrected, yes. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Goodrich.
Aye.
Knutson.
Aye.
Quinn.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resolution is approved, all ayes with Gross absent. Item number 12, we have a presentation of the Inclusive Economic Development Plan by the staff members of ASTIG Planning. All right, I will turn it over to the 2 of you. Take it away.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you all for inviting us back, and sorry we couldn't make it the first time. COVID is the world that we live in, so glad to be here with you. My name is V. Fixmo Rise, CEO and founder of Estig Planning, and I'm here with my colleague.
Hi everyone, I'm Asmita Paudel with Estig Planning. And yeah, thank you so much for having us here again. So today I'll just go through a little bit through our brief introduction of the plan and go through the planning process that we did and some of the outreach highlights, and then go into the findings and recommendations. So we are very thankful to our partners and focus group session coordinators, without whom this would not have been possible at all. About the plan, the Inclusive Economic Development Plan is a collaboration between multiple stakeholders, be it business support institutions or cities or the county itself, that focuses on the underestimated business communities in the Johnson County. The main purpose of this plan to uplift existing and ongoing plans that are already in place in some of the cities and the county, and to maybe provide a little bit more tangible steps by which the cities and the support institutions can create a more inclusive economic environment for the underestimated business community. So talking about our planning process timeline, it started last year in November. So we started our online research in November, and then we started doing our public outreach during February till May this year. So we had an online survey that we published, and we had a flyer that went with it, and we did a door knocking throughout all of the underestimated businesses we could identify all over the county. And then we did city council presentations in the city as well, and we invited people to provide feedback or just fill out the survey. And we had 3 focus group sessions with business support organizations, and we had 6 interviews, in-person interviews with business owners, and we had a strategic doing session in June, which some of you attended, and then we developed the final recommendations for the plan. So from the survey, we had 105 total respondents, among which 63 were existing business owners and 17 emerging business owners. So we're thinking of opening up a business. And 24 support institutions also responded to the survey. And because this is an inclusive economic development plan, the questions we posed during our survey were inclusive too. We really, tried to make them inclusive, and we had an open-ended question for, this is just an example, we had an open-ended question for what races and ethnicities people identified with. And so that is how we got this beautiful, diverse group of races and ethnicities that we have in our county. And these are some of the pictures from our focus group sessions. So this is about the educational experience of underestimated business owners that responded to our survey. And this is really is to act as a myth buster that people might think that underestimated business community might not have higher level education. However, that is not true at all. We see that they have at least undergraduate, and a lot of them have master's degree too, and some of them have a PhD degree too. So when we asked our business community, underestimated business community, about what percentage of business income they spend on renting spaces for their businesses, we see a lot of different variety of answers. But what is appalling is we see people are spending, higher majority of people are spending 20 to 79% of their income for renting the spaces, where we see that people are recommending only 12 to 20% to be spending in this space to have a profitable business. However, this is the current condition. So we wanted to know what really inspires our business community, and we asked what are the reasons for them, or like what inspires them to open up a business. And people had a lot of positive things to say, that they wanted to have an impact in the community, they wanted to diversify the food scene, and they wanted to increase representation of their cultural group, and some people also wanted to have a generational wealth for their kids. So a lot of positivity that we have in our community. However, when we ask them, they require financial resources to start those businesses and act upon those inspirations. People said that they found banks where they could, access financial resources to be very intimidating, and they would rather sell their assets. For example, somebody sold their truck instead of, asking for a loan or going into a bank. And some people also say that loans are pretty small, and the payback period that is there is too small for them to make a profitable business out of it. Some of the other resources that people mentioned that act as barriers for them are, we see the majority of them are responded with affordable rental costs for business space and access to money and finding a desirable location. So they all tie into, what's really the biggest barrier for them. Now we will take over and talk about what our support institutions had to say.
Thank you. Yeah, so as we mentioned, we not only worked with underestimated businesses, but we also worked with support institutions like cities, the county, and banks, as well as ICAD and the Business Partnership. And we had some questions for them as well. So when you look at what support is out there, we wanted to know, do you have those types of programs potentially that, or policies that specifically focus on, BIPOC or underestimated businesses? And pretty much what came out of that was no, and the vast majority don't. And the ones that do really have been in the last 2 years, which has been, I think, an impact of COVID, right? That there was clearly some widening gaps, and people said, wow, we aren't serving our BIPOC community. How will we do that? And so there's some hope in that, and that, there are some out there, and the ones that have been out there are recent. And then one thing that we also wanted to understand was information flow. We have, support institutions that are trying to get out, when are their grants, when are their loans, when are the programs happening? If we're going to be doing an educational program on, how to apply for loans or set up a business, how do we get that information out? And what some of the interesting thing was, oftentimes, those support institutions are relying on their websites. But what we know is that that's not where people are going, right? It's really word of mouth, which is not terribly surprising, but also there's an opportunity there. And one thing that we learned anecdotally was that actually what would really probably get more interest is if you were to go to the tiendas and the laundromats and the barbershops and just put up flyers, because there's just cultural places that people go to get their food, to get their haircut. Especially if it's in their language, then the outreach is gonna feel more genuine, that there's more effort behind it. And so those were some of the anecdotal things that we heard. But from also a nonprofit organization perspective, we have an embarrassment of riches in Johnson County, I always say, when it comes to nonprofits. And so those nonprofit organizations are reaching people, which is great. So we have some of that overlap as well. So there's certainly some things to work towards, but there are things that are working. So language is so important. And one thing that we really wanted to understand, that we kind of had an inkling was one of the barriers, was just access in people's native languages. And I think oftentimes, as you can see, about, almost 70% said, no, we don't have our information in different languages. But I think what was also interesting was that most people who said yes, it was just in Spanish. And if you look actually at the demographics for the county, really Mandarin and French are actually spoken more often than Spanish. So I think it's something interesting to look at and also to consider as cities and support institutions are looking to translate or interpret information. And then, is there funding out there already? So particularly in response to the pandemic. And this I thought is really interesting. So while almost 60% said no, 33% of the support institutions said yes. Well, when you look at that, it was $50,000 is really what we're talking about. And there may be some in there that just wasn't reported, but what is striking is that when you look at the millions of dollars that were funded into our state, into our, Iowa, to say that only $50,000 was offered here in Johnson County to 33 business owners, if you look at those loans, they're $200, they're $500. I think the most was around $1,500. There's really some work that we could probably do there when you put it in that perspective. It's not all doom and gloom. There was a lot of solutions and opportunities that were identified both from the businesses and then also from the support institutions. So that one-on-one mentorship, having places where people can go and just get information. If word of mouth is where you're getting all of your business information, I mean, can you even imagine? I mean, that's like if somebody's having a bad day at the bank and they talk to your cousin, that cousin's like, don't ever go to that bank. I mean, then you're never going to go to that bank. So what people said was they wanted just a place where they could go and trust the information, and it's just one place. It's not 12 places, and there's classes that are available. Obviously, affordable spaces and more funding is always there. But street vending opportunities. Oftentimes people in their own cultures, street vending is just something that's done. I'm sure many of us have traveled to these places, and you're getting it from the cart on the street. And it's not that they don't want rules and regulations. They do. They want to have some more flexibility in when and where. But they want to follow all the rules and regulations, and then they want to also know, how can I find out about those rules and regulations, which we talked about actually in the strategic doing session. So another positive note was the equity perception. So when you looked at the business side, of underestimated businesses, people were saying, yes, I strongly agree with the statement to create equity and opportunity for all. I believe a greater portion of resources should go to those who are most in need. And then when you look at the support institutions, you also see that trending to the right. And so I think what it really is telling the story of we are all in this together, and we see that there is a need in our community, and we should be supporting people. The barriers, as many of we've talked about these a bit, you can see there's gaps in resource information. Some things that showed up that I think a lot of us are familiar with is that lack of access to childcare. I mean, that's just a statewide national issue, but we at least know that, BIPOC businesses aren't immune to that. In fact, they're probably having almost adverse impacts and unable to, really fulfill a lot of their dreams in terms of their businesses because of lack of access to childcare. I think when you look at missing relationships with business support systems like trusted bankers, accountants, and lawyers, that is a huge, huge barrier. If you don't have an accountant or a banker that you can go to just even ask questions, you're already behind. Whatever grant is coming out or loan or federal program, you don't have anybody to go to. So that's a pretty big barrier. We did do a strategic doing session, and I want to thank. I know Mayor, you were there as well, and there were some other Coralville folks that were here that were at the strategic doing session, and we came up with 3 Pathfinder projects, all of which have taken off. And one of the ones that I know Coralville was really involved in, because I was a part of it, was the mobile food vendor portal. So mobile food vendors just wanted a place where they can go. Where's all the permitting? Where's all the food, health? And so we worked with Johnson County Public Health too, so that we're speaking to one another. So that's going to be incredibly helpful. But there was also business education series and then mentorship program that came out of that. And I love this aspirational quote: "Imagine a robust entrepreneurial community in Johnson County that authentically welcomes and empowers underestimated business owners with a sense of belonging throughout all stages of business and idea development." It's just very supportive all the way through. Of course, we get to the recommendations, which is what everybody wants to see. So we had to kind of break this up into a couple different sections. Our number one recommendation, which I'll go through in a second, is this neighborhood level multicultural business hub. And I know it's a mouthful because I just choked on it, but essentially it's that one-stop shop. And we put it neighborhood level. Even from a planning perspective, we know that neighborhoods are much more effective and reduce the barriers of trusted individuals, also obviously access to, because it's within your neighborhood. So we'll go through some of those as well. But then there's behind the scenes support, and then there's public facing support. These are all listed out. I am definitely not going to read them all to you, but they are in the plan, and we try and give some further examples. So that first one about the neighborhood level multicultural business chamber hubs. So as we mentioned, the neighborhood level reduces those barriers of access. We also have those trusted resource experts from the neighborhood, people that look like you, speak your language, that centralized information, the mentorship programs, and then and just as important really is the direct access to federal, state, and local grant opportunities. So you're looking at a business chamber, a 501c6. And so they're not having to go through multiple channels that then trickle down to their community, to their neighborhood, to just, get what's left of the funding. They're actually able to go directly to that access for those grant opportunities. And then the commercial kitchen space or maker space, we just heard everywhere. I mean, it's like the hottest trend really is, I think, the acknowledgement that a commercial kitchen space or a maker space is a real barrier. People want to make their own foods. They want to, process certain, kitchen things and turn them into a business. There are certain huge barriers there that a commercial kitchen would help. Our second recommendation that's really public-facing is supporting current BIPOC-led business support institutions. And that's just to recognize that there are already organizations that are doing this work. And then we tried to provide a criteria for what that would look like, knowing that, potentially funding or resources would go towards this. So the first one would be, of course, a proven record of established economic development. So obviously just being in good standing with the city or county, but then also actually providing those services, the funding and lending programs, hosting those economic development programs. And I want to just really stress this, that we tried to give an idea of who those would be, because that's who we were working with, but that this is by no means an exhaustive list. It's just if you take these two criteria and make it your own and say maybe there are other criteria, that then you could look at who's already doing the work and who can we go to. Who can we go ahead and provide those resources to those organizations. Some of the other public-facing things, if you're already doing a funding or loan program, there's certain things, increasing that borrowing amount, more time for the first payment, and then the improved networks support between those that are already doing the work in terms of serving underestimated businesses. Behind the scenes, and this is really key, and I think a lot of people don't really think this is a thing, but it's really a thing, is that there has to be work within the organization. So when we look at, recognizing that there has to be anti-racism training, we even go a step further and say, create a culture of care centered on truth-telling and reconciliation that addresses harm or trauma in safer, braver spaces, and, establish celebration and joy as an equal partner in healing and transformation. And I know that sounds very squishy, but what it really is trying to acknowledge is that people feel like they cannot walk into a bank or a city or a county building because they feel the racism. They've literally told us they will take a white friend with them because they know they will be treated better. It's a stark reality, and I mean there was a lot of other side conversations about the state level of governance right now, but I think what we're trying to look at with Johnson County is how do we change that culture? And it's internal work. It's really having to look at what are the policies and procedures within the organization itself that try and break down and address that internalized racism. And to go a step further is to incorporate multicultural and multilingual designs, and that can be as simple as having many flags from a different from all different countries. It makes people feel like, oh, people see that there's a lot of diversity, or that's my flag, or it's hello in many different languages. That makes a difference. It makes people feel like they are welcome. So that was one thing that was really talked about quite a bit. Additionally, there's some planning things that we recommended, adaptive reuse assessments, ordinances, overlay districts, and then, of course, the clear city permitting, which is already something that you all are doing. For our next steps, we're continuing to support our Pathfinder projects, and then we're also wanting to help organizations create those action steps. If there are specific goals that you have for inclusive business development, or that there are local organizations that are doing the work, but you're not sure how to convene them, we can assist with that or encourage you to do that, and then try and put it all together in a cohesive way. So in many ways, this is a plan, but it is really also a study. We found that people would say, yes, we want to be inclusive, we want to have inclusive economic development, but we don't know what's out there. And we said, well, that's not enough. Like, we have to know what's out there to get a baseline. And so what I think that you'll see, and we tried to just give the highlights. If you go through the plan and you're like, oh my God, that was highlights. But truly, if you want to go look at some of the details, the survey questions that we asked, how we asked them, these things matter, process matters, how you approach it matters. And so I hope that it provides a baseline of entry for all of the cities and the county and our support institutions to really create that inclusive economic development within our county. Because if you look at where also our projections are for demographics, they're changing, right? And so we're getting more people of color, more immigrants, more people, just, this is gonna be, the future is going to be more diverse. And so embracing that in real ways will go so much farther than just doing business as usual. And I think people are really ready for that. And I'm excited to say that, you know, Johnson County was very receptive. We have had a lot of receptivity from other municipalities around the county. So anyway, I know I've talked a lot, so I would love to, you know, answer any of your questions.
I love this so much. I mean, this is something that that's been on my mind for a long time, and to see how far the conversation has come in the last 5 years is encouraging. And I love that you are addressing the fact that, you know, when we talk about economic development, when we talk about some of the things, you know, when we talk about like networking and the, you know, entrepreneurship and all of that, that it is geared very much towards one specific type of, you know, networking, and it's I'll just say it, it's white networking, you know, and to get into that deeper level of, you know, we've been talking for years, how do we do this? How do we reach these individuals? And we're doing the same things. Right. And to see it go a level deeper, and it's like, no, if you really want to be successful, you have to think outside the box. You have to have some cultural competency and understanding that not everyone is comfortable walking into a bank. Not everyone, I mean, for a variety of reasons. Yeah. That it's not just that it's intimidating, but there are some traumas, historic, systemic traumas that are associated with a lot of these systems that make it difficult for people to navigate. And so I love that this is really getting into that deeper level of how do we do this in a way, how do we support. I feel like that's as a city, our job is to look at how do we support and grow. But a lot of this has to come from the populations and the like you said, the people that are in the neighborhoods, the trusted sources. We're seeing this with what Tasha Lard is doing.
Yeah, exactly.
In the South District. She is the hub. Yeah. She is, and you know, we've had a lot of conversations about how she is very deliberate about being the source. Yeah. And she's setting up she's got the Black professionals of Lynn and Johnson County. I mean, there's just some really exciting stuff. And I think we're at a place now where we can make some real change. Yeah. You know, I love it.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to say too, I know Councilperson Huynh, you had asked if, you know, where can we find this information and how will it be made available? And so we have talked with the county and they will be hosting it on their website. We're also working with the University of Iowa, who is translating this into French, Mandarin, and Spanish. And we also have a story map and, you know, to help people navigate, you know, what's been done in like an online presence and find resources, but also a pamphlet that we will have available, working with ICAD and the business partnership and the businesses that we've worked with in those languages as well, that identifies not only what is here, but also the resources. And I want to emphasize that the reason why we're even just reaching back into the community is because even surveying is an extractive methodology. We're literally asking you to take time to answer our questions. And so we've tried in as many ways as we can to give back and to say your stories, your voices, your experiences are not going into the void. We want you to feel supported and, you know, to try and give back some of that, which I just always want to encourage. It's not a perfect thing, but it's something. Yeah, so just wanted to identify that.
Any other questions or comments or thoughts?
I just want to say thank you for, you know, for getting the conversation started, because it's clearly needed, but the conversation hasn't started, and now we can begin to really do the work. As we can see in the last, the work have been going for a long time, but I think within the last 2-3 years, that is really a front, and people start to recognize it, and we see the good that it has been done when people recognize it.
Yeah.
So, thank you for doing this work, and thank you for consolidate all of this into one place where it make it easier for, underestimated folks to come and find information, find resources, get the thing that they need.
Yeah, well, thank you. And really, Coralville has been a leader in this. Every time we've turned around and had questions or needed you all to show up to something, you have. And so just wanted to say thank you. It feels like genuine, authentic, interaction with what we're doing that I know will continue even beyond just, this presentation, obviously. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for your presentation.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, what do we have next? Oh, we have item 13 is the consent calendar. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Madam Mayor, I'd like us to consider motion to approve the consent calendar as presented A through Q.
Moved by Goodrich, seconded by Wynn. Could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Knudsen? Aye. Quinn?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Goodrich?
Aye.
Consent calendar is approved, all ayes with Gross absent. Item number 14, City Administrator's Report.
Yes, Mayor, just a couple of quick items. First, I'd like to thank all of the volunteers for the activities with the Isle of Lights. We had a lot of fun. We had the biggest turnout that we've had in many, many years, and lots of different activities because we had different people and more people involved in the whole planning and adding to the event. So we look to forward to hopefully even expanding upon that in the next few years. Also, I think tied into a little bit of the previous discussion, I'd like to thank the Convention and Visitors Bureau for all their work on the World Wrestling Cup this last weekend. Over 18 countries were represented in that event this weekend, and you talk about a way to learn about cultures and people in all kinds of different ways. This was really one of those, and the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Extreme Arena staff put a huge amount of effort into welcoming those people from around the world and making sure that they felt comfortable in our community. And obviously there was some differences culturally between some of the different groups, and I think they did the best that they possibly could in trying to deal with that. So just thank all of them for their efforts as well.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Mayor's report. I have a few things, just kind of piggybacking off of what Kelly said. It was a very busy and fun and festive weekend in the city of Coralville. Friday night we had the opening ceremonies for the World Cup Wrestling. We also had our community meal at the rec center, and I'm sure Hi will have more details. It was a wonderful meal. It was absolutely delicious and just great to have those community meals at the rec center with so many different activities going on. It was a lot of fun. Also just wanted to say thank you to the volunteers for the Isle of Lights and all of the community members who joined us. It was great. It was one of the biggest and best Isle of Lights celebrations we've had in recent years. And of course, wanted to thank the staff at the CVB. I know they have been working so hard. They had with the volleyball, they had the Donnybrook event, and then this World Cup event. And they've just been hitting a lot of home runs on these events. And we really appreciate all of their work, and it's just so important and exciting for our community to have these world-class events, you know, right here in our own backyard, and they're a big part of making that happen. So we really appreciate them for that. I also wanted to acknowledge that Sunday is the first day of Hanukkah, and wanted to just reiterate, you know, my support for our friends in the Jewish community here in Coralville. I'm sure many of you have heard we did have an unfortunate incident with some anti-Semitic flyers being placed in the neighborhood adjacent to our synagogue, and I want to make it very clear that hate speech is not okay. Anti-Semitic behavior and language and any Holocaust denying behavior is not okay, and we are standing and supporting the members of the Jewish community in the city of Coralville. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about a hate crime ordinance. So I had spoken with the rabbi and the board president of Agudas Hakim just to show my support for them. And in that conversation, that hate crime ordinance was asked about. I know that we had discussed it briefly about a year and a half ago. I wouldn't mind just reviving that conversation. I know we talked a little bit about enforcement, and I think if I remember correctly, what we currently have is actually stronger than what an ordinance would.
And the hate crime, if you remember the discussion, it's an enhancement on your punishment, and cities can only prosecute simple misdemeanors. So any hate crime enhancement would not be an ordinance violation. It would be a state law violation.
Gotcha.
So if you're a second degree of whatever, it would go up to a first degree. We can only prosecute simple misdemeanors under city law.
Okay, great. I wanted to just ask about that again, and just, you know, kind of get that out in part of the conversation, given the events of the last week. And that is all I have this evening. City Attorney's report.
I was just, you know, I'm a sports nut, so I saw the Mississippi State football coach, Mike Leach, passed away of a heart attack. Well, if you read his obituary, he has a famous offense, which is throws the ball all over the place, called the air raid offense. Well, he and Hal Mummy, who used to coach at the University of Kentucky, they invented that when they coached at Iowa Wesleyan University in Mount Pleasant. So that's where the air raid offense was organized and invented before they went on to bigger and better things. So I thought that was kind of interesting that Iowa Wesleyan was the birthplace of an offense that pretty much everybody uses these days.
Nice. Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, committee and council members report. We'll start down at this end with you, Mike.
Sure, thank you, Madam Mayor. Makes you wonder if Grinnell's offense will soon. That's a basketball. They just shot 111 threes in one game. That's the only shot. Well, they had a couple free throws, but they didn't take a 2-point shot. Maybe that'll grow to the next. I doubt it, but you never know. Anyway, last week I attended the Johnson County Energy District. It was the second monthly meeting. I sent some information about that. Heard a nice presentation from Hills. Little town of 800 has 5 solar projects funded by the local option sales tax that they have down there. They have other projects that they fund with that, but also heard, and those projects are tough. I've had conversations with staff because there hasn't been federal funding to support city projects like that, unlike businesses and individuals. But Steve Geyer from the Environmental Council, Iowa Environmental Council, summarized changes in the IRA and how that's going to impact and opportunities. And there's a couple things that jumped out to me. One was that, you know, the new law does allow non-taxable entities such as cities or I guess charities to benefit from as well. So it's not going to be a tax credit. It'll be a you know, some type of direct payment to cities. And the other thing that caught my eye for Coralville, so it's going to cover looked to me like roughly 30% of the cost of these projects over the next 10 years or so. And if you're in a brownfield, and I think we have a few brownfield sites. Is the IRL still one of them?
Yep.
Yeah, so they qualify for a bonus. So it looks to me like if we did something in some of these brownfield sites or anywhere, you know, there are going to be opportunities that I hope we can take advantage of in the future. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Huynh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I would like to thank all of the city staff and volunteer for the Eye of Light. That is one of my family favorite events in town. And this year it was a lot more to enjoy. I had fun putting out lights. The weather wasn't terrible, much better than last year. I wish for weather like that when we have to put out all of those lights next year. I also had a thought, I shared this with Council Knudsen, that maybe instead of doing it by hand, maybe we can, I don't know, have a buy-in from all of the community member who have house that we line the street with those lights, go in half-Z and do an electrical, or actually Council Knudsen said maybe do a tax, what did you say? Like at the end, there's like a $50 tax rebate or something,
yeah,
and then
rebate time.
property tax. So I don't know, maybe something that we can think about, especially Kelly, if you move on and we no longer have scout help, it's going to be a lot of work. So just a thought. I also would like to thank the rec center staff. Their partnership with the community meal last Friday was amazing. We have been partner for the last few years, but I think this year has been the best so far. We have 468 meal that serve to people, and we send a lot more home with people because we only have rice and pondu left at the end. We ran out of everything. And just to watch the entire community coming together under one roof, sharing a heartwarming meal, especially with this meal, we had a menu that we have never done before. It's an African-inspired menu, and it was crafted by one of our newest staff member who is from the Congo. It was well received. People come up to us and ask for recipe for pondu, which is a cassava green that they have never had and had for the first time, and they loved it. And staff, Park and Rec staff has set up the place beautifully. Santa flowing off all the way from the North Pole. He had a lot of visitor, and the library set up a table that gives out books, and they were able to give out every single one of the books that they bought. So thank you to the Friend of Library for providing those books for our children in the community. And the Children Museum was here with the activity, and that was also well attended. Also, Miriam's Girls Club was here providing a glitter tattoo, and that was a hit as well. We also have a table from the library passing out information and asking community members to share their story for our 150 years celebration, why they choose Coralville, and how did Coralville become their home. So I'm eager to see those stories share. It's also the night where we launch our CAP program, which is a community ambassador program that fall under the sort of the care of Samira, which is our community resource navigator that we just hired 5 months ago. And we have 11 CAPS member, and 9 different languages is spoken between those CAP member. So we were able to reach into a lot of community that for whatever reason we could not build a bridge in, and they were able to visit with a lot of community member and share resource and also get feedbacks from community member and find a way to be able to connect those resources to community that have been kind of fall into those gaps. It was widely successful. So yeah, thank you for all of that. And then for our CCPA, they have a debut of the musical play just this past weekend, and it's sold out. The show was sold out for both days. So if you still want to see that, this coming weekend is your chance, December 16 to 18. I believe this weekend they still have a couple of tickets, but if you want to see the show, call their box office soon, because I wouldn't be surprised if it will be sold out again. So, and that is all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Yep, I'm not, they might be sold out for the whole run.
That would be good.
Because I have tickets for Friday night, but when I got my tickets last week, I could not get 3 together. It was,
That's great.
yeah, it really is. It really is fantastic. So definitely call and double check to
Yes.
see.
Can you get them on StubHub?
No.
No.
I don't know, maybe we'll have some scalpers just because it's a hot ticket, right?
All right.
Yeah, but City Circle put on really, really good play and musical.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's exciting. All right. Keith.
Quickly, Mayor, I would just echo the comments made by my colleagues here. You think back, it's since we started with state volleyball the end of October, it's just been really exciting time in Coralville with the Dan Gable Donnybrook and the World Cup over the weekend, Isle Lights over the weekend. It's just been an extremely exciting time in Coralville. I just want to mention a couple things. A couple weeks ago, I've been confused about this Colony property, so I contacted our Parks and Rec director, Sherry, and asked her if she'd be willing to. Well, actually, I asked her to tell me how to get there, and she said, "Well, why don't I go out with you?" So we took a walk of the Colony property, which was, an hour or so well spent. It's a beautiful property, and got to look at the fens up close and all the work that's been done out there. There's a lot more to be done, but. I wouldn't recommend it over the next couple months, but if you're looking for something in the spring, it would be a nice walk out there, and it's really a beautiful piece of property. The other thing I just wanted to mention, an update from the Coralville Food Pantry. We're getting very close to actually making the move. Still waiting for a piece of electrical equipment, but we have some temporary approval from the State Utilities Board, and hopefully Coralville will give us a temporary occupancy permit too. With the holidays and everything, it'll probably sometime mid-January before we actually move into that space, but it's getting very, very close, so it's exciting. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And then last but not least,
Yeah, thank
Lori.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Coralville has a rich history and bright future, and we celebrated that this weekend in all the ways that you've mentioned already. We do have some stuff that you can buy as gifts, and you can purchase these at the rec center or here at City Hall, and we have all sizes and a few different offerings and so on. This is a stocking cap and t-shirts, sweatshirts that are ever so cool. I also wanted to send sympathies to the family. Mary Lynn Bogart, her husband Nolan, passed away. He was an employee here in the building department for many years. And our thoughts and prayers go out to him, and then also to Sandy Boyd's family. He was past president of the university. And just want to thank everyone for all the work that was done and all the fun this weekend. Thank you.
Lori, you should have written the white sweatshirt, because that one
That's
was very
nice,
popular. My kids snack too.
All right.
Yeah. They're like, oh, we want this. So, yeah, they snack too on, was it Sunday? Yeah.
That's great. And those, can you purchase those, did you say, can we purchase those on the website too, or no?
In person now.
Just in person,
Mhm.
okay,
At the rec center or here at City Hall.
okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Huynh, seconded by? Seconded by Knutson. All in favor, say aye.
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 Our meeting is adjourned.